In the dim-lit corridors of a coral reef, where daylight filters down as wavering beams fractured by surface waves, few things move without purpose. Here, between crevices of ancient stone and living coral, a patient assassin coils in near-complete silence. The water is still, disturbed only by the flicker of sand grains carried by passing currents. Among the anemones, soft corals and staghorn spires, a greenish-brown shadow blends into the scenery so seamlessly that even the fish swimming inches away remain unaware of its presence. This is the lair of the moray eel, a creature so uniquely adapted to its narrow world that its entire physiology is built for confined violence. The body of the moray eel stretches with muscular fluidity, capable of bending and compressing into impossible shapes. Unlike most fish that rely on speed across open water, the moray's strength lies in the tight spaces. Its skin glistens not with scales, but with a thick layer of mucus, an adaptation that makes it not only highly flexible, but also resistant to abrasion as it slips between corals, rock ledges, and wreckage. This mucus isn't just a lubricant, it's laced with compounds that inhibit bacterial growth, an essential defense for a predator constantly exposed to the scrapes and infections of reef life. In some species, it even contains toxins, giving the eel a passive chemical deterrent to predators. The head, slightly triangular and fixed with small round eyes, seems almost unremarkable at first glance. But once the moray strikes, the illusion of simplicity vanishes. It does not charge or chase. It waits. And when the moment is right, when a shrimp backs too close or a reef fish turns the wrong direction, it lunges with terrifying speed, clamping its curved teeth into flesh with unrelenting pressure. That would be enough for most predators, but not the moray. Hidden within its throat is one of the strangest and most unnerving mechanisms in the animal kingdom, the pharyngeal jaw. Unlike most fish, which use water suction to draw prey deeper, moray eels have abandoned that strategy. Their narrow heads and constricted skulls make suction feeding inefficient. Instead, once the outer jaws have secured the prey, a second set of jaws launches forward from deep within the throat, hinged, hooked, and mobile. These inner jaws seize the prey a second time and drag it backward into the digestive tract, independent of the outer skull. This two-step feeding process is unique among vertebrates. The first strike captures, the second consumes. This remarkable adaptation isn't just a quirk, it's a necessity. The eel often hunts in confined, complex spaces where maneuverability is limited and suction currents would be useless. The pharyngeal jaws offer mechanical reliability. Anchored to specialized musculature and connected via a long, flexible ligament, they are capable of surprising reach. High-speed imaging of feeding morays reveals just how fast this hidden apparatus can deploy. Within fractions of a second, the inner jaws launch forward, secure the prey, and pull it back in a movement eerily reminiscent of science fiction. But the eel's power doesn't lie in jaws alone. Its entire body is a weapon of precision. The elongated, sinuous frame is packed with densely arranged muscle fibers that allow for sudden, explosive movements in any direction. And while its dorsal fin extends the full length of its body, giving it stability and lift, it lacks pelvic and pectoral fins altogether. This fin reduction increases its ability to twist, reverse, and snake through labyrinthine terrain. In ambush, the eel is a study in economy. No wasted motion, no unnecessary noise. Just a head poised in silence, and then a blur of lethal intent. Moray eels are not solitary only by disposition, but by design. Their lairs are chosen with care, often in locations where visibility is limited and multiple escape routes exist. They may live in the same crevice for years, defending it with aggression not just against rivals, but occasionally even from their own kind. Despite their reputation for ferocity, however, they are not indiscriminate killers. Their hunting is highly targeted. Their diet spans crustaceans, cephalopods, and reef fish, anything small enough to fit into their gape and slow enough to be taken by surprise. Yet despite their ambush tactics, morays are not above cooperative hunting. In some ecosystems, notably in parts of the Red Sea and Indian Ocean, certain moray species have been observed working alongside groupers in coordinated attacks. The grouper, a powerful fish that hunts in open water, will lead the moray to prey hiding in reef crevices. The moray flushes the prey out, the grouper chases it down. Both benefit. It's a rare example of interspecies tactical alliance, a behavior once thought exclusive to mammals and birds. Beneath the surface of these predatory feats is an anatomy built to withstand the reef's brutal mechanics. The moray's jaw muscles are not just strong, they are arranged in a unique configuration that prioritizes grip strength over bite force. Once it clamps down, escape becomes nearly impossible. Its teeth, backward curving and needle-like, are not for slicing but for anchoring. Prey caught between them often suffers deep puncture wounds, torn fins, and severe trauma long before the pharyngeal jaws even engage. Even its respiration adds to the unsettling image. Morays lack the opercular covers that protect the gills in most fish. Instead, they constantly open and close their mouths to pump water through their gill slits, creating the impression that they are always ready to strike. This mouth-gaping behavior is not a threat display, but a necessity, a constant ventilation system for a predator that spends much of its life lying in wait. Despite their intimidating design, moray eels are not invincible. Juveniles are vulnerable to larger reef predators, especially barracudas and sharks. Even adult morays can fall victim during molting phases, when their mucus layer thins and infections take hold more easily. In some regions, morays are targeted by humans both for food and ornamental value. However, they are not easy prey. Their flesh can accumulate high levels of ciguatoxin, a toxin produced by reef algae and concentrated up the food chain, which can cause severe poisoning in humans. As a result, moray eel meat is consumed with caution, if at all, in many traditional fishing communities. As twilight sets over the reef, the moray becomes more active. Dusk and night offer cover for movement, and many of its preferred prey species are either settling into crevices or becoming disoriented in the fading light. With sinuous grace, the eel leaves its lair, moving like a ribbon through the water column, flicking its head back and forth as it samples the current for scent. The night sea belongs to the hunters, and in this hour, few are as equipped or as adapted for the role as the moray. Beneath its eerie gaze and alien anatomy lies a predator shaped by necessity, honed by constraint, and perfected by isolation. Its double jaws, its slippery skin, its confined world, all serve one purpose: to strike without warning and to consume without fail. And in the narrow, silent corridors of the reef, that purpose is fulfilled again and again. As the tide retreats and light filters across the reef, the underwater landscape comes alive with shifting color and movement. Schools of parrotfish weave in and out of coral channels, their scales flashing like stained glass in motion. Crabs scuttle between rubble patches. Octopuses unfurl their limbs from bottle-shaped dens, and in the distant blur of the shallows, the shadow of a shark rolls past like a cloud on the reef floor. Yet amid this ecosystem of restless life, one creature remains almost completely still. So still, in fact, that it's often overlooked entirely. It does not swim. It does not chase, it does not flee, but in its own quiet, passive way, the sea urchin is one of the reef's most enduring and underestimated defenders. At first glance, a sea urchin resembles a dark, spherical pincushion, its spines protruding in every direction, casting faint shadows on the substrate beneath. It appears primitive and unsophisticated, a relic of an older world, but closer inspection reveals a level of biological complexity few would expect. Across the surface of the urchin's body, nestled between the spines, are hundreds of tiny, mobile tube feet, transparent, suction-tipped appendages that allow the animal to move slowly across rock and coral. Though its locomotion is nearly imperceptible, it is deliberate. The tube feet are part of a sophisticated water vascular system unique to echinoderms, allowing the urchin to explore its environment with both chemical and tactile sensitivity. The spines themselves vary dramatically depending on the species. Some are long and thin, needle-like and flexible, designed to deter predators from every angle. Others are short, thick and sharply pointed, functioning more like armored thorns. But what they all have in common is more than just a physical barrier. Many urchin spines are capable of delivering venom, ranging from mildly irritating to medically dangerous. This venom, introduced through minuscule channels within the spine structure, can cause sharp pain, muscle cramping, or, in extreme cases, systemic reactions. The sting isn't always immediate. In some species, the tip of the spine breaks off and remains embedded in the wound, releasing toxins gradually as it dissolves into tissue. For an animal without limbs or a mouth capable of biting, this form of defense is devastatingly effective. Yet the spines are only part of the story. Nestled between them, almost invisible unless magnified, are specialized structures known as pedicellariae, tiny, claw-like appendages mounted on flexible stalks. These operate like microscopic pincers, snapping shut on anything that lingers too long on the urchin's surface. They are not passive ornaments. Pedicellariae are active defense mechanisms, capable of seizing small parasites, deterring algae overgrowth, and in some cases, injecting venom of their own. Scientists have observed these minuscule jaws responding in real time to contact, opening and closing in coordinated bursts, creating a hostile microenvironment that deters even the smallest of threats. For the sea urchin, survival is not about speed or agility, but about turning every square millimeter of its body into a no-go zone. In the predator-rich environment of a coral reef, where attacks come from above, below, and laterally, this combination of physical and chemical defense has made the sea urchin remarkably resilient. Fish that feed on invertebrates, like triggerfish or pufferfish, are among the few that can breach its defenses, often using strong beaks or specialized jaws to crush the spiny test and access the soft inner body. But even they approach cautiously, mindful of spines that can puncture mouths or lodge in gills. For most would-be predators, the risk outweighs the reward. Despite this formidable defense, the urchin plays a crucial role in maintaining the balance of the reef. Most species feed on algae, scraping it from rocks and coral with a specialized structure called Aristotle's lantern, a complex 5-part jaw system located on the underside of the animal. This feeding behavior helps prevent algae from overgrowing coral surfaces, which can smother reef-building organisms and disrupt the photosynthetic relationship that sustains coral health. In essence, urchins act as reef janitors, grazing slowly but constantly, keeping the ecosystem clean and balanced through sheer persistence. However, the balance is delicate. In areas where urchin populations are reduced, often by overfishing of their predators or direct human harvesting, algae growth can explode. This phenomenon has been observed in parts of the Caribbean and Indo-Pacific, where coral reefs have degraded rapidly after the loss of key herbivores like the long-spined Diadema antillarum. Conversely, in areas where urchin numbers rise unchecked, they can become overgrazers, stripping reefs bare and eroding coral foundations. The sea urchin, though armored and seemingly passive, is a keystone species. Its presence or absence reshapes the reef. Beneath this ecological influence lies a surprising regenerative capacity. Like many echinoderms, sea urchins can regenerate damaged tissue with remarkable speed. Spines lost to injury regrow within weeks. Pedicellariae reform. Even parts of the central test can be reconstructed over time. This regenerative ability is not just a survival tactic, it's a window into evolutionary biology. Studying urchin regeneration has offered scientists insights into stem cell function, developmental pathways, and even the genetic underpinnings of aging. Despite their ancient lineage, dating back over 450 million years, urchins continue to inform some of the most cutting-edge biomedical research. The reef, in its complexity, rarely rewards weakness. Yet the sea urchin thrives without aggression, without speed, without camouflage. It has succeeded through deterrence, through fortification, and through the quiet art of defense. It is not an apex predator, nor is it a prey species easily consumed. It occupies the middle, untouchable to many, indispensable to more. As the reef slips into dusk, shadows elongate across the coral slopes, and the sea urchin continues its slow trek beneath the waves. It may move just a few centimeters over the course of an hour, but its influence stretches much further. Behind its quills and chemical weaponry lies a creature that upholds the health of one of the planet's most complex ecosystems. It is not the most glamorous of marine life. It does not dazzle or chase or leap, but it endures. And in the reef's never-ending competition for space, light, and survival, endurance often wins. The ocean floor is never truly still. Even in the calm shallows of a tropical lagoon, the sand seems to shift of its own accord, nudged gently by the rhythm of passing tides, sculpted by the trails of crabs, and scattered by the fins of foraging fish. It is in this soft, pale sediment that one of the ocean's most elusive ambush predators makes its home, hiding in plain sight with a level of precision that renders it all but invisible. With its body flush against the seabed and only the faint outline of spiracles betraying its position, the stingray becomes part of the landscape, a living, breathing trap embedded within the terrain. From above, the stingray appears as a slight rise in the sand, no more suspicious than a sunlit ripple or the shadow of a drifting cloud. Its body, flat and disc-like, lies flush against the substrate, The edges of its pectoral fins blend perfectly with the surrounding sediment, aided by an ability to flick sand over its back with subtle undulations. This camouflage is not a passive trait, it's a deliberate act of concealment. The stingray actively buries itself, leaving only its eyes and spiracles exposed, allowing it to breathe while maintaining a low profile. In these moments of stillness, it becomes a static part of the seascape, its presence detectable only to those who know precisely what to look for. And even then, barely. But stillness, in the stingray's case, is not a lack of action. It is tension, compressed potential energy waiting to be released. When prey wanders into range, be it a small bony fish, a shrimp, or an unsuspecting mollusk, the transformation is immediate. The stingray surges upward in a cloud of sand, wings snapping forward in a sudden strike. Its mouth, located on the underside of the body, opens downward to seize its target, aided by powerful muscles that generate suction. The feeding is swift and efficient. In many cases, the prey is swallowed whole before the sand has even settled. This ambush strategy is built on more than just concealment. Beneath the stingray's smooth, flattened surface lies a system of sensory adaptations honed for predation. Its eyes, while useful for detecting motion and light, are not the primary tools of the hunt. Instead, the stingray relies on electroreception, specialized organs called ampullae of Lorenzini that detect the faint electrical fields produced by living organisms. Every heartbeat, every muscle twitch, every minute movement produces an electrical signal. And the stingray, even buried and blind to sight, can sense it. Electroreception allows the stingray to locate prey even when it is hidden beneath the sand, something many reef-dwelling creatures depend on for survival. Crabs, clams, and small fish may think themselves safe beneath a layer of substrate, but to the stingray, their presence is as obvious as footprints in snow. This biological radar grants the ray an advantage most predators lack: the ability to hunt without visual contact. It navigates the world through sensation, detecting life through electrical whispers that travel through seawater like a trail of breadcrumbs. But for all its silent hunting prowess, the stingray is most famous, or infamous, for its defense. Unlike sharks or eels, it does not rely on teeth or bite force to repel attackers. Instead, most stingray species possess one or more barbed spines on their tail, each lined with grooves filled with venom. These spines are not flexible like a whip, but rigid and serrated, capable of slicing through tissue with brutal efficiency. The venom, while rarely fatal to humans, causes intense pain, swelling, and in some cases muscular degeneration. The combination of mechanical and chemical injury makes the stingray's tail a weapon of last resort, rarely used, but devastating when deployed. Contrary to popular perception, the stingray is not an aggressive animal. The barb is used almost exclusively in self-defense, triggered when the ray feels cornered or stepped on. Most injuries occur when unsuspecting swimmers or divers place their feet near or on a buried ray, prompting an instinctive reaction. The ray snaps its tail upward in a reflexive arc, embedding the spine in whatever body part happens to be within reach. After such an encounter, the ray often retreats, leaving its spine behind like a jettisoned blade. These spines are capable of regrowth, though the process takes time and energy, making them a resource the animal does not expend lightly. Some rays take this defense a step further. Among the lesser-known members of the ray family are the electric rays, flattened relatives equipped not with venomous barbs, but with paired electric organs capable of discharging powerful shocks. These organs, located on either side of the head, produce electric pulses that can be used to stun prey or deter predators. In species like the torpedo ray, these discharges can reach up to 220 volts, enough to disorient a fish or send a clear warning to any would-be attacker. Unlike the venomous stingray, the electric ray does not strike with a tail, but embraces its prey, enveloping it with its body and delivering a jolt that can be both paralyzing and decisive. In evolutionary terms, this dual pathway, chemical defense in one lineage, electrical offense in another, highlights the versatility of ray adaptations. Both strategies arise from the same ancestral body plan, yet diverge into separate methods of survival. Whether through stealth and toxin or shock and grasp, these creatures have found ways to dominate the bottom zone of their habitats, where vision is limited and ambush is king. The behavior of stingrays shifts with the time of day. During daylight hours, they often remain buried or slowly cruise along the bottom, searching for invertebrates to uncover. At night, many species become more active, moving through lagoons and reef flats in search of prey. Their swimming is a spectacle of controlled grace. Pectoral fins undulate in smooth waves, lifting the body just off the bottom in what looks like a hovering glide. The rhythm is consistent, almost hypnotic, broken only by the quick flicks of the tail and occasional wing beats to adjust direction. In calm conditions, a ray in motion barely disturbs the sand below. These movements are not just elegant, they're functional. Rays have adapted to conserve energy while covering large areas of territory, often returning to the same feeding grounds night after night. Studies using tracking tags have shown that individual stingrays can display remarkable spatial memory, navigating complex reef environments with apparent familiarity. Some even display social behaviors, congregating in loose groups during mating seasons or aggregating at cleaning stations where smaller fish remove parasites from their skin. In these interactions, the stingray's calm demeanor belies the arsenal it carries. To many observers, it appears harmless, even approachable, and in truth it is, when left undisturbed. But beneath that docile exterior lies a blend of sensory precision, physical resilience, and defensive capability that makes the stingray one of the most effective, low-profile predators on Earth. As the tide returns and the light begins to fade, the sand once again takes on its natural contours. The ripple patterns are reset, the currents smooth the edges, and the evidence of ambush disappears. The stingray lowers itself back into its hidden position, eyes peeking just above the grains, waiting. In the quiet shallows where the water turns bronze with sunset, the trap resets, electric, venomous, invisible, and ready. The mangrove fringe is quiet beneath the midday sun. Its twisted roots reach into the muddy shallows like skeletal fingers, anchoring entire trees that seem to hover between two worlds, half submerged in brackish water, half clawing toward the humid sky. Small fish flicker among the roots, feeding on algae and detritus. Crabs inch sideways along the bark, careful to stay in the shade. Above the water, herons stand motionless, their long necks ready to strike. Yet for all the life this murky edge supports, something far more ancient and deliberate lurks just beneath the surface. Motionless, patient, and nearly invisible. Only the faintest ripple betrays it. Two nostrils breaking the waterline like periscopes, and a faint glint from the dark, armored ridge of a skull. The crocodile is watching. To call the crocodile a reptile is accurate but insufficient. It is not merely a descendant of dinosaurs. It is a refined product of the same evolutionary arms race, a lineage honed by over 200 million years of predation. And unlike its extinct cousins, the crocodile did not vanish when the age of giants ended. It adapted. It withdrew from competition on open plains and climbed no mountains. Instead, it embraced the edge zones, estuaries, swamps, tidal rivers, and coastal inlets. Places too harsh, too unstable, or too brackish for many others. Here, in water that shifts with the moon and land that floods with the rain, the crocodile became something extraordinary. A predator, equally comfortable on land and beneath the surface, equipped with tools designed for both ambush and endurance. The body is shaped like a living weapon, streamlined in silhouette but armor-plated in detail. Rows of bony scutes, known as osteoderms, line the back and tail, giving the crocodile a tank-like resilience to bites, strikes, or human-made tools. These plates are not just passive armor. They're integrated into a complex circulatory system that helps regulate body temperature, acting like a natural heat exchange. In hot climates, the crocodile will bask with its mouth open, jaws agape, not in threat, but in thermoregulation, allowing evaporative cooling while its body absorbs warmth through the armor that covers it. Below that formidable surface lies muscle built for sudden explosive power. The crocodile is not a fast runner in the traditional sense, but its burst speed, on land or in water, is startling. A short lunge from the riverbank or a single sweep of its tail can close the gap between predator and prey in seconds. But the true weapon lies in the head. The skull is broad, flat, and impossibly dense. Within it, a bite force exceeding 3,500 pounds per square inch, greater than any known predator on land or sea. When the jaws close, they do not slice, they crush. Bone, tendon, shell, it makes no difference. The crocodile's bite isn't designed for finesse. It is a vice clamped in an instant. Yet the jaw's power alone isn't what makes the crocodile such a lethal predator. It's what comes after, the death roll. When a crocodile captures large prey, it does not chew. Instead, it clamps down, locks its grip, and spins with violent force. This rotation, known as the death roll, uses the crocodile's own body mass and tail torque to tear flesh from bone, disorient prey, and disable resistance. The spin is not random. It is a coordinated, practiced maneuver made possible by the crocodile's dense musculature and low-profile frame. Even prey too large to swallow in one piece can be reduced this way, limb by limb, bite by bite, until it is manageable. The physics of the role are brutal. The crocodile's body becomes a rotating cylinder of armored momentum. Water churns violently, and silt clouds rise as prey is dragged under. For the victim, whether it's a zebra crossing a river or a fish too slow to dart away, the sudden inversion, coupled with the pressure of the bite, causes extreme trauma. Dislocations, internal rupture, drowning. Often it's a combination of all three. In shallow water, the crocodile will use the riverbed itself as leverage, bracing its body to maximize torsion. In deeper water, the tail becomes a steering rudder, allowing precise positioning mid-spin. The saltwater crocodile, Crocodilus porosus, is the largest living reptile and the most accomplished in this dual-domain hunting. It ranges from coastal India to northern Australia, crossing vast stretches of ocean using currents and tidal flows. These crocodiles can survive in full marine environments for weeks at a time, their kidneys and specialized lingual glands filtering excess salt from their bodies. Juveniles spend their early lives in mangrove nurseries, but adults can reach lengths of over 6 meters and weigh more than 1,000 kilograms. Despite their size, they glide silently just beneath the surface, with only their eyes and nostrils exposed, positioned high on the skull for minimal detection. Unlike many predators that rely on speed or endurance, the crocodile depends on the element of surprise. It hunts from concealment, often motionless for hours, then explodes into action with terrifying speed. Studies have shown that crocodiles are capable of learning the movement patterns of their prey. In regions where humans regularly fish or gather water, crocodiles have been observed adjusting their routines, waiting near access points, or approaching silently from downstream. This intelligence, coupled with patience and perfect camouflage, makes the crocodile not just a physical threat, but a cognitive one. Its lung capacity allows it to remain submerged for over an hour without surfacing. This isn't a simple matter of holding its breath. The crocodile's circulatory system is adapted to prioritize oxygen delivery during dives, shunting blood flow away from the limbs and toward vital organs. A valve in the heart, the foramen of Panizza, allows strategic blood redirection, ensuring maximum efficiency during long periods underwater. This biological design turns the crocodile into a stalking machine, capable of waiting beneath the surface until opportunity aligns. Even reproduction is shaped by the crocodile's amphibious life. Females lay their eggs in mounded nests of rotting vegetation and soil, which act as natural incubators. The temperature of the nest determines the sex of the hatchlings, a biological mechanism known as temperature-dependent sex determination. Once the young emerge, the mother carries them in her mouth to the water, where survival rates are grim. Few make it to adulthood, but those that do inherit not just the physical traits of their ancestors, but the same silent intelligence, the same ability to disappear beneath the surface and wait. Despite their fearsome reputation, crocodiles are not indiscriminate killers. They conserve energy, attack only when success is likely, and spend much of their time in passive observation. But when they do strike, there are few second chances. Their attack is not a warning, it is a conclusion. The jaws close, the water erupts, and the death roll begins. Whether in a remote delta or a tourist-frequented lagoon, the dynamics remain the same. A predator that has not changed in form because it has not needed to. As the day fades and the mangrove shadows lengthen, the crocodile slides back beneath the surface. The wake settles, the roots resume their quiet dance in the current, and life returns to its usual rhythm. But somewhere in the murk, in the margin between water and land, the ancient predator waits, still armored, still watching, still ready to twist the laws of motion and flesh to its favor. The roll may be rare, but when it comes, it is final. Along the rocky contours of the subtidal zone, just below the lowest reach of the tide, the ocean floor is littered with fragments of broken shell, waving fronds of kelp, and clusters of encrusted mussels clinging to the stone. Light filters through the shallows, broken into wavering ribbons that dance across the sea floor. It's a tranquil scene, quiet except for the faint rasp of small creatures grazing and the subtle shifting of sand beneath the current. Yet within this peaceful stillness moves a creature both ancient and unexpected, a slow-moving predator that glides with silent intention. The starfish, or sea star, is not what it seems. To the casual observer, the starfish appears inert, perhaps even lifeless. Its stiff symmetry, radial arms, and textured skin lend it more the appearance of sculpture than animal. It does not swim, nor does it chase or flee, but this passivity is misleading. Beneath its rough skin lies one of the most unique and complex body plans in the animal kingdom. Starfish are echinoderms, relatives of sea urchins and sea cucumbers, defined not by a centralized brain or fast reflexes, but by a hydraulic system that propels them through some of the most deliberate and methodical feeding strategies in the sea. Each of the starfish's arms houses hundreds, sometimes thousands of tiny tube feet, small, suction cup-tipped appendages powered by seawater. These are not just for movement, they are for exploration, detection, and manipulation. With each step, water is pumped through the animal's water vascular system, creating a controlled pressure that extends and contracts the tube feet like microscopic pistons. This allows the starfish to cling tightly to rocks, pry open the shells of its prey, and inch across surfaces with surprising coordination, all without the need for muscles in the traditional sense. Despite lacking eyes, starfish possess photoreceptive cells at the tips of their arms, simple sensors that detect light and shadow. This helps them orient themselves and move towards shaded crevices or prey-rich feeding grounds. Some species even respond to the chemical trails left behind by mollusks, tracking their prey over time by following faint gradients in the water. And when the hunt begins, it is a slow-motion siege. The starfish's primary prey is often bivalves, clams, mussels, and oysters, animals that protect themselves with tightly closed shells and the strength of their adductor muscles. But the starfish is undeterred. Using its tube feet, the starfish attaches to both sides of the bivalve's shell and begins a patient, unyielding pull. This is not a contest of speed, but of endurance. The starfish applies steady pressure, often for hours, exploiting the mollusk's fatigue. The moment the shell gapes, even slightly, the starfish deploys its most alien trait, its stomach. Through a slit on its underside, the sea star extrudes part of its digestive organ directly into the shell of its prey. Once inside, digestive enzymes are released, breaking down the soft tissues while the prey is still alive. It is a form of external digestion, a feeding method so different from our own that it borders on the surreal. When feeding is complete, the stomach is retracted, the meal absorbed, and the predator moves on, leaving behind only empty shells. This slow, methodical predation is not limited to individual meals. In many parts of the world, outbreaks of certain starfish species can devastate marine ecosystems. One of the most infamous is the crown-of-thorns starfish, Acanthaster plancy, a venomous, multi-armed species native to the Indo-Pacific. In balanced numbers, it plays a role in coral turnover, feeding on fast-growing species and allowing slower corals to thrive. But in outbreak conditions, often triggered by nutrient runoff or overfishing of natural predators, their numbers can explode. Thousands descend upon reef systems in coordinated waves, consuming vast swaths of living coral as they move. The damage is swift and widespread. Entire sections of reef can be reduced to bare limestone in weeks. What makes this predation so effective is the starfish's ability to persist in conditions that would challenge most predators. Many species can regenerate lost limbs, a trait that serves both defense and reproduction. A single arm, if severed with part of the central disc intact, can regrow into a complete new individual. This resilience allows starfish populations to recover rapidly from injury and makes them difficult to control through manual removal. It also means that physical attacks from predators often fail to stop them entirely. The limb may be lost, but the organism survives and continues to feed. Their defenses, though subtle, are effective. The skin of most starfish is covered in calcified ossicles, small plates that give the body a tough, gritty texture and provide limited armor. Many species also host specialized cells that secrete noxious compounds or contain protective spines. Some can release saponins, soap-like chemicals that deter fish predators. And others, like the crown of thorns, are armed with long, venomous spines that cause painful stings and inflammation in would-be attackers. Despite this, certain fish, sea snails, and even larger invertebrates have evolved strategies to prey on them, targeting the soft tissues beneath the arms or attacking during vulnerable moments of movement or regeneration. Their reproductive strategies add another layer of complexity. Most starfish are broadcast spawners, releasing clouds of eggs and sperm into the water column in massive seasonal events, often synchronized with lunar cycles. Fertilized larvae drift with plankton for weeks or even months, dispersing across great distances before settling to the sea floor and metamorphosing into juveniles. This wide dispersal helps colonize new areas, but also means starfish populations can appear suddenly and in large numbers in places previously unaffected by their presence. In colder waters, like those found in the North Pacific, species like the sunflower starfish, once among the largest and fastest of the group, have suffered massive die-offs due to wasting disease, a condition linked to warming waters and viral infections. These die-offs ripple across ecosystems. Without sunflower stars to control populations of sea urchins, kelp forests can be consumed at an unsustainable rate, turning biodiverse habitats into underwater deserts. Once again, the presence or absence of the starfish has effects far beyond its immediate diet. Back on the reef, the starfish continues its slow, relentless movement. It does not chase, nor does it need to. Its entire anatomy is built for siege. It surrounds its prey, waits, and invades. There is no sound of struggle, no dramatic flash of movement, only the methodical application of pressure and the silent turning of tissues into nutrients. The reef shifts around it, fish darting in shoals, coral polyps reaching into the current, but the starfish remains steady, dragging its spined silhouette across the substrate with purpose. It may not resemble the classic predator. It lacks eyes that glare or jaws that tear. But the starfish is nonetheless a master of its ecological role, equipped with tools that defy expectation and strategies that challenge our definitions of animal behavior. Its weapon is patience. Its battlefield is the seafloor, and its legacy, though silent, is etched into the empty shells and devoured reefs it leaves behind. In the clear tropical waters of coral reef systems, visibility can stretch for meters in every direction. Sunlight pierces the surface like blades, illuminating schools of shimmering damselfish and parrotfish that graze across coral rubble. Each rock, each crevice, seems to breathe with life. Tiny crustaceans, darting blennies, and wary gobies all nestled within the reef's porous labyrinth. But among the steady, flickering rhythms of this sunlit world swims a predator whose method is neither speed nor chase, but calculation. The grouper does not need to run. It waits, and when it moves, the strike comes not from the teeth, but from the physics of pressure itself. The grouper is broad and heavy-bodied, built less like a sleek predator and more like a blunt force weapon. Its massive head and barrel-shaped torso give it an unassuming silhouette, one that often blends into the background as it hovers motionless near coral heads or mangrove roots. But the stillness is deceptive. Beneath that bulky profile lies a mechanism of astonishing speed and power. The grouper's mouth is a finely tuned suction apparatus, capable of creating sudden, devastating negative pressure. In less than 20 milliseconds, it can open its jaws and expand its buccal cavity, turning its head into a high-speed vacuum that draws water and anything swimming in front of it directly into its throat. This form of predation, known as suction feeding, is one of the most effective ambush tactics in the aquatic world. The grouper does not rely on pursuit. It positions itself strategically, sometimes vertically among coral spires, sometimes horizontally beneath overhangs, and waits for prey to come within range. Small fish, crustaceans, even octopuses, all it takes is one misjudged twitch or a moment of distraction. The grouper's gill covers flare, its mouth bursts open, and the water rushes inward. Prey are pulled in so quickly they often cannot react at all. There is no snapping shut, no clamping of teeth, only the inexorable, inescapable pull of a pressure differential. This precision is made possible by the grouper's complex musculature and skeletal adaptations. Muscles along the skull and throat contract in sequence, expanding the oral cavity at the exact moment the jaws spread. The rapid expansion lowers the internal pressure, and water, carrying the unsuspecting prey, floods in to equalize it. To manage the intake, groupers often angle their bodies just before striking, aligning their gill slits to channel the expelled water backward while retaining the solid target. The entire process is controlled, fluid, and nearly invisible to the untrained eye. But the grouper's predatory skill doesn't end with suction alone. It has also been observed participating in cooperative hunting, an extraordinary behavior that pushes the boundaries of what we typically expect from solitary reef predators. In particular, groupers have been documented collaborating with moray eels in joint foraging ventures. This unlikely alliance works because each species brings a different hunting advantage. Morays can snake into narrow reef crevices where fish hide, while groupers dominate open water ambushes. The grouper signals the moray by shaking its head or positioning its body above a hiding spot. The moray then dives into the hole, flushing the prey out. If the fleeing animal bolts into the open, the grouper takes it. If it tries to stay hidden, it may become a moray's meal. Either way, one of the hunters benefits. Such cooperation suggests an understanding of reciprocal advantage, a level of cognition rarely associated with reef fish. This partnership has been observed in the Red Sea, the Indo-Pacific, and even the Caribbean, hinting that it may be more widespread than previously believed. In some cases, groupers will seek out a moray they've previously hunted with and wait patiently for it to emerge from its resting place before initiating the hunt. It is a dynamic, flexible strategy, far from the brute simplicity often assumed of fish behavior. Even when hunting alone, the grouper exhibits notable spatial awareness. Studies using tagged individuals have shown that groupers patrol territories with high consistency, revisiting known feeding sites and ambush locations, and often timing their patrols to tidal shifts and light conditions that affect prey behavior. They use terrain features, ledges, coral spires, drop-offs, as components of the kill zone, herding or surprising prey into areas with limited escape options. When they strike, it is often not in reaction, but by design. The grouper's body, though seemingly slow-moving, supports this strategy through sheer control. Its broad fins allow for exact hovering and micro-adjustments. The eyes, set forward and slightly upward, provide binocular vision that enhances depth perception, critical for accurately timing suction strikes. The combination of these traits makes the grouper not a pursuer, but a tactician, one that prefers to let the prey make the mistake of coming too close. Beyond behavior, the physiology of groupers reveals yet another layer of complexity. Many species are protogynous hermaphrodites. They begin life as females and later transform into males. This transition is often triggered by social hierarchy or the absence of dominant males. In a given population, the largest individuals, often holding territories or harems, are males, while smaller or younger fish remain female. This dynamic allows for flexible population structures and maximizes reproductive success based on environmental conditions. The transformation process includes not only gonadal changes, but shifts in coloration, behavior, and dominance roles. As apex ambush predators, groupers play a vital role in maintaining the balance of reef ecosystems. They regulate populations of smaller reef dwellers and help control overgrazing species like herbivorous fish and invertebrates. In healthy reef systems, their presence is a sign of stability. But in areas where they've been overfished, often targeted for their size and meat quality, cascading effects can follow. With fewer groupers, populations of mid-tier predators and prey species can swell unchecked, altering the structure and biodiversity of the reef. Their vulnerability to fishing pressure is partly due to their reproductive biology. Many groupers form spawning aggregations, large gatherings at specific sites and times, often linked to lunar cycles. These aggregations are predictable and easily exploited by fishers, which has led to population crashes in several species. Conservation efforts, including marine protected areas and seasonal fishing bans, are now attempting to safeguard these spawning events and restore balance to affected ecosystems. In their natural habitat, groupers remain elusive. Their coloration, ranging from mottled browns and reds to speckled greys, matches the reefscape with uncanny precision. Some individuals develop skin patterns that closely mimic coral formations or shadowed sand, offering concealment both from prey and potential threats. When disturbed, they rarely flee in panic. Instead, they slip back into the reef with a single thrust of their tail, vanishing into crevices where their broad heads barely fit. But their knowledge of the terrain offers security. In the final moments before the strike, there is no sound, just a slight tilt of the head, a calculated flex of the fins, and then movement too quick for the eye to track. A puff of silt clouds the water, a shrimp vanishes from sight, and the grouper resumes its still position as if nothing happened. To an outside observer, it looks as if the fish never moved. But in truth, the reef has just witnessed one of the most efficient feeding mechanisms in the animal kingdom, a high-speed act of controlled physics disguised as stillness. The grouper doesn't rely on showy aggression. It doesn't chase down its prey or engage in prolonged combat. It watches, waits, and executes with mechanical precision. Its mouth, an instrument of pressure and timing, is not just a tool, it's a plan. In the intricate maze of the reef, where every niche has a specialist, the grouper has claimed the role of the ambush architect, a predator whose silence speaks louder than any burst of speed or display of force. In the quiet edges of seagrass meadows, where tides move with a steady rhythm and light filters in golden waves through the surface, life moves slowly but deliberately. These submerged plains stretch like underwater savannas, their grass blades swaying in unison, sheltering a diverse community of small invertebrates and juvenile fish. Predators patrol the perimeter. Stingrays glide along the sand, pipefish hover vertically among the blades, and cuttlefish scan from above. But in the thick of this dense, flickering foliage, something strange stands guard. Clinging tightly to a single grass stalk with a prehensile tail, armored in bony plates and swaying gently with the current, the seahorse waits. It is an animal out of place, more sculpture than swimmer, and yet perfectly adapted to this exact niche. And the one we're looking at, he's pregnant. Among vertebrates, the seahorse is a rare reversal. In this species, it is the male who bears the unborn, the one who carries the next generation in a brood pouch that expands like a swelling tide on his belly. It is not a passive role. This pouch is vascularized and complex, capable of regulating salinity and oxygen, providing nutrients, and even secreting antimicrobial compounds. During pregnancy, the male's body transforms into something akin to a mammalian womb, a structure evolved not just to protect, but to actively nurture the developing embryos. From fertilization to birth, the male is the battleground on which survival is negotiated. The mating ritual itself is delicate and prolonged. Seahorses, particularly the more sedentary species, engage in daily greetings with their mates, involving synchronized swimming, color changes, and tail entwining. These rituals are more than displays. They maintain pair bonds, often monogamous for a breeding season or longer. When ready to mate, the female deposits her eggs into the male's open pouch through a specialized ovipositor. Fertilization occurs internally, and the pouch seals. Over the coming days or weeks, the male's body expands, sometimes doubling in size. He continues to feed and hold his position, camouflaged among the weeds, while his metabolism diverts resources to the developing young. This reproductive strategy carries real advantages. By shifting the gestation role to the male, seahorses increase their reproductive output. The female, no longer burdened with prolonged egg-carrying duties, can begin producing a new clutch of eggs almost immediately after transfer. Meanwhile, the male's body is optimized for stationary defense. His upright posture and curled tail allow him to cling tightly to a grass blade or coral branch, resisting tidal movement while conserving energy. In essence, he becomes a stable living incubator, a bubble knight standing guard over his brood. But this isn't a strategy without risks. Seahorses are poor swimmers, relying on a small dorsal fin that flutters rapidly to propel them forward, and a pair of pectoral fins behind the head for steering. Their movement is inefficient and slow, often vertical rather than horizontal, and easily overwhelmed by current or predatory pursuit. Their primary defense is invisibility. Their skin, covered in chromatophores, allows them to shift colors subtly to match their surroundings. Some species even grow dermal appendages that resemble the grass or coral around them. When danger approaches, a seahorse doesn't flee, it freezes. Its best chance of survival is to avoid detection altogether. Armor plays a key role in this strategy. Unlike most fish, seahorses do not have scales. Instead, their bodies are encased in a series of interlocking bony plates, creating a flexible yet rigid exoskeleton. This body armor provides some resistance against bites and crushing jaws. While not impervious to all threats, it can make a difference in encounters with small to medium-sized predators. Additionally, this structure supports the unique posture of the animal, allowing it to maintain a vertical orientation without effort, an advantage in habitats where upright vegetation dominates the landscape. Despite their fragile appearance, seahorses are ambush predators in their own right. They feed on small crustaceans and planktonic organisms, sucking them into their tubular snouts with a rapid intake of water. Their eyes move independently, scanning for movement without betraying the rest of the body. When prey comes within range, a rapid flick of the head delivers a targeted strike, pulling the meal into their fused jaws in an instant. It's not a dramatic hunt, but it's efficient and perfectly suited to their environment. The pregnancy, though outwardly tranquil, is physiologically intense. The brood pouch's internal environment must adapt continuously to the growing needs of the embryos. Early in gestation, the pouch closely mimics the salinity of the surrounding seawater, but as the embryos develop, the internal conditions become more controlled, buffered against fluctuations in temperature, oxygen, and salinity. The male's body modulates these conditions, often through changes in hormonal profiles and localized blood flow. In some species, over 1,000 young can be developing simultaneously, each receiving oxygen and protection within this temporary sanctuary. When the time comes, birth is anything but peaceful. The male's body contracts in spasmodic bursts, forcing the young from the pouch and into the water in a writhing mass. Some species release them all at once in a sudden burst of movement, while others expel them in smaller waves, the male twisting and pushing against vegetation to assist the process. The offspring, no larger than grains of rice, are immediately on their own. There is no parental care beyond birth. Most will not survive. Predation, starvation, and currents will claim nearly all of them within the first 48 hours. Yet a few, perhaps 1 in 1,000, will grow large enough to find their own blade of grass, curl their tail around it, and begin the cycle again. Despite this vulnerability, seahorses persist in diverse habitats across the globe, from warm tropical reefs to temperate estuaries. Their presence often goes unnoticed, even by those familiar with marine life. They live in the margins, in shadows and weeds, behind coral rubble and within mangrove roots. Their camouflage and stillness make them ghosts of the water column, present but unassuming. Yet their role within the ecosystem is significant. They serve as both predator and prey, regulating populations of small invertebrates while providing sustenance to larger fish and cephalopods. Human impact, however, has not gone unnoticed. Seahorses are threatened by habitat destruction, particularly the loss of seagrass beds and mangrove forests due to coastal development and pollution. They are also targeted in the curio trade and traditional medicine, often collected in unsustainable numbers. Their life history, slow movement, low dispersal, and high juvenile mortality makes them particularly vulnerable to these pressures. Conservation efforts now include marine protected areas, captive breeding programs, and international trade regulations, but challenges remain. In the shifting light of late afternoon, the seahorse remains fixed to its perch. The water moves gently, rolling the grass in rhythmic arcs, and the male adjusts his grip with a subtle flick of the tail. Inside his pouch, the next generation readies itself for the world beyond. He does not patrol a territory, nor does he challenge rivals. His battle is internal, fought with biology and patience, with vascular walls instead of claws. Among all the predators and prey that populate the reef, few strategies are stranger, or more quietly complex, than the one this armored sentinel has mastered. Here, survival is not a matter of brute force or speed, but of adaptation shaped by millennia. And in this battle, it is the father who carries the burden. In the silty tidal flats where rivers meet the sea, the water becomes heavy with sediment, and the shimmer of visibility dims. The current flows slow and brown with life, teeming with microscopic organisms too small to see, and yet abundant enough to feed millions. This estuarine world is not defined by speed or spectacle. There are no flash predators darting across coral, no high-speed chases in open water. Instead, it is a landscape shaped by time, tides, and the quiet work of creatures that seem to do nothing at all. But beneath the surface, half buried in the mud and clustered like shingles across rocks, something more strategic is at play. The oyster lies still, but it is not defenseless. To an untrained eye, the oyster is a closed case. Two shells pressed tightly together, mottled in grey and brown, cemented to rock or stacked upon its own kind. It appears lifeless, its only giveaway the rhythmic pulse of its shell gaping ever so slightly, pulling in water and filtering it through its gills. And yet, this unassuming posture hides one of the most efficient biological mechanisms in marine ecosystems. The oyster is a filtration machine, drawing in liters of water every hour, trapping plankton, algae, and even harmful particles in a mucus net before passing them to its mouth. It feeds not by the chase but by the stream, harvesting energy passively from the flow of life itself. But filtration is not merely sustenance. It is a subtle form of ecological warfare. Oysters are keystone engineers, not just individual feeders, but architects of entire environments. A single oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water per day, clearing the surrounding habitat of turbidity, excess nitrogen, and organic waste. In large numbers, their collective filtration shapes the entire water column. The result is not just clearer water, but healthier ecosystems, more oxygen, more sunlight penetration, and more space for seagrasses and other organisms to thrive. Their filtering capacity helps prevent algal blooms, reduce disease prevalence, and stabilize estuarine chemistry. In this way, oysters wield influence disproportionate to their appearance. They are engineers of clarity in an otherwise murky domain. Their strength, however, is built on more than function. It is built on structure. Oysters do not live alone. They grow in dense clusters, forming reef-like masses that span entire tidal zones. These oyster reefs, layered in the broken and fused remains of past generations, create hard, three-dimensional surfaces in an otherwise soft-bottom world. As more oysters settle and cement themselves to the reef, the structure grows outward and upward, breaking waves, trapping sediment, and creating refuge for hundreds of other species. Fish, crabs, shrimp, worms, even juvenile predators seeking a nursery ground. The oyster reef becomes a fortress, not in the defensive sense of iron and walls, but in its complexity, resisting erosion, absorbing pressure, and withstanding the tests of storm and tide. Still, their survival strategy is not without risk. Being immobile means oysters cannot flee predators. They are targeted by crabs, sea stars, fish, and, increasingly, by humans. Their shells, calcified and layered with growth rings, offer a first line of defense, closing tight under pressure and sealing the animal inside. The adductor muscle, which holds the two shell halves together, is remarkably strong. In some species, it can sustain a clamp tight enough to resist the entry of water, silt, or claws for hours. But when physical barriers are breached, the oyster has no second move. It lives and dies by its ability to remain shut. And yet their stillness hides other weapons, chemical ones. Within the oyster's gut and gill tissue resides a community of bacteria, some harmless, others opportunistic. Under normal conditions, these bacteria play roles in digestion and nutrient cycling. But under stress, particularly when water warms or pollution increases, some of these bacteria, Vibrio species among them, can become pathogenic. For animals that feed on oysters raw, including humans, the results can be deadly. These bacteria do not originate from the oyster itself, but the oyster concentrates them while filtering. In this sense, the oyster is not the cause, but the conduit, a passive collector turned toxic reservoir. And predators that break the shell without caution may discover the cost of such contamination. The irony is that the oyster, by performing its ecological duty, sometimes becomes hazardous. Its ability to filter large volumes of water brings in not only food, but also pollutants, heavy metals, pesticides, hydrocarbons from boat traffic, or industrial runoff. These contaminants accumulate in its tissues over time. While the oyster suffers little from this burden, it becomes a bioindicator, a living record of ecosystem health or degradation. In scientific studies, oyster tissue is often analyzed to track environmental change, offering a glimpse into the chemical history of entire coastal regions. Reproduction in oysters is both strategic and unusual. Many species are broadcast spawners, releasing sperm and eggs into the water column in synchronized pulses. Timing is critical, usually aligned with lunar cycles, water temperature, or salinity changes. Fertilized larvae drift as plankton for weeks, vulnerable to currents, predation, and chemical gradients. When they finally settle, often using calcium cues or bacterial films to select suitable surfaces, they cement themselves permanently. From that point forward, they will never move again. Their lives become a balance between growth and defense, building shell, thickening layers, and finding space on an ever more crowded reef. Some oysters are sequential hermaphrodites, starting life as males and later becoming females, depending on size, age, and population density. This flexibility ensures reproductive balance and maximizes success in tightly packed reefs. In some conditions, entire reefs can switch sex ratios seasonally, adapting to environmental cues. This dynamic reproductive system is less about individual survival and more about population-level resilience. The reef doesn't need individuals to move. It needs them to respond, to adapt through time, generation after generation. In the face of exploitation, oysters have faced near collapse in many parts of the world. Once plentiful in estuaries from the Chesapeake Bay to the Yangtze Delta, wild populations have been decimated by overharvesting, dredging, disease, and habitat loss. Restoring oyster reefs has become a focus of marine conservation, not just to recover a resource, but to rebuild coastal resilience. Artificial reefs, shell recycling programs, and aquaculture innovations have begun to reverse some of this damage, but recovery is slow. Oysters grow on the skeletons of their predecessors. Without a base, the fortress cannot rise. Yet in the right conditions, the oyster remains a model of ecosystem engineering. In restored reefs, water clarity improves. Fish populations return. Shorelines become more resistant to erosion. And in the quiet between tides, the oyster does what it has always done: open and close, filter and feed, build and endure. The seduction of the oyster lies in its stillness, in the illusion of simplicity. It does not hunt, it does not flee, but it wins. With no eyes, no teeth, and no limbs, it outlasts and outbuilds many of its predators. Its shell is its sword, its reef is its shield, and its presence marks not just survival, but control. In a world shaped by motion, the oyster survives by standing still, one filter at a time. Far from shore, where the water deepens to sapphire and the light loses its grip on the seafloor, a shape appears, broad, smooth, and silent. It emerges not with splashes or sudden motion, but with the quiet confidence of something built to belong here. The manta ray does not swim in the way most fish do. It glides. Its pectoral fins stretch out like wings, spanning up to 7 meters across in some individuals, creating an unmistakable silhouette beneath the surface. The motion is slow, deliberate, almost meditative. Upward stroke, downward stroke, no wasted effort. It drifts through open ocean like a living aircraft, yet unlike a predator searching for prey, it consumes life by filtering the very medium it flies through. The manta ray is built for open water. While many marine animals use camouflage or speed to navigate danger and hunt, the manta evolved to travel vast distances without the need for concealment. It makes no attempt to hide. Its body is dark on top, white below, a classic countershading that reduces visibility from both above and below. But it moves through the sea with an openness that few large animals can afford. Its eyes are positioned laterally, offering wide vision, while the brain housed within its head is one of the largest relative to body size among all fish. This intelligence isn't just theoretical, it manifests in behavior. Mantas can recognize individual divers, return to specific cleaning stations over years, and navigate through large dynamic pelagic environments with apparent spatial memory. There is reason to believe that their large brains are not merely for motor control, but for processing complex environmental and social cues. Their feeding behavior is equally refined. Mantas are filter feeders, but unlike whales or baleen-equipped relatives, they use a combination of physical structure and acrobatic maneuvering to harvest plankton from the water. At the front of their head are 2 flexible appendages known as cephalic fins, rolled when at rest, unfurled into curved scoops when feeding. These fins funnel water into the manta's cavernous mouth, channeling plankton-rich flow directly into a series of gill rakers that strain food from the water while allowing clean seawater to exit through the gills. This strategy is not passive. Mantas seek out upwellings and plankton blooms, timing their visits to moon phases and current cycles. In these feeding zones, they sometimes enter into spirals, looping patterns known as feeding loops or barrel rolls, where the manta rolls vertically through a thick layer of plankton to maximize intake in minimal space. The movement appears balletic but is calculated. These loops allow the manta to stay within the densest parts of the bloom, minimizing energy expenditure while maximizing feeding efficiency. In some cases, multiple individuals will join in formation, lining up side by side to sweep through clouded water like a fleet of autonomous submarines. Unlike most fish, which rely on stiff body movement or tail propulsion, the manta uses only its wing-like fins for thrust. The motion is graceful, with no visible vibration or oscillation. Even at high speed, the manta remains quiet, eerily so, slipping through the ocean like a ghost made of carbon fiber. Despite their size, manta rays are entirely harmless to humans and most marine animals. They lack stingers, teeth, and aggressive instincts. Their only defense is size, awareness, and their ability to evade. Yet they do engage in interactions that are anything but passive. Cleaning stations, specific coral outcrops where cleaner wrasses and shrimp remove parasites and dead skin, are critical parts of a manta's life. These visits are methodical. Individuals return to the same sites repeatedly, often queuing or hovering patiently while cleaners attend to them. In these interactions, the manta exhibits an unusual level of trust and control. It tilts its body, spreads its gill slits, even opens its mouth slightly, allowing the smaller fish to venture inside without harm. For the wrasser, it is a meal. For the manta, a necessary service. Scientists have observed that these cleaning interactions extend beyond pure hygiene. The manta often revisits the same cleaner fish, suggesting individual preference or learned behavior. And it is at these cleaning stations that mantas are often most approachable, hovering nearly motionless in shallow water while divers look on. Whether these interactions are purely functional or contain some social component is still debated. What's clear is that mantas are not simply drifters, they are participants in their ecosystem, engaging in complex, recurring relationships with other species. There are two main species of manta ray: the reef manta, Mobula alfredi, which tends to remain in coastal zones and reef systems, and the giant oceanic manta, Mobula birostris, which roams the open ocean and migrates across international waters. Both species share similar morphology, but the oceanic manta is larger, more solitary, and adapted for long-distance travel. Satellite tagging has revealed that these giants cross entire ocean basins, using thermoclines and current systems to navigate. They may dive to depths of over 1,000 meters, possibly for thermal regulation or to access deeper prey layers. These deep dives occur in near total darkness and require physiological adaptations, slow heart rates, oxygen conservation, and thermal inertia to survive the cold, high-pressure environment. Reproduction in mantas is slow and infrequent, another reason for their vulnerability. Mating often involves aerial courtship displays, chases, spins, and synchronized swimming in mid-water. Females are pursued by males in prolonged trails, with only the strongest and most persistent achieving mating success. Fertilization is internal, and the female gives birth to a single live pup after a gestation of more than a year. The pup, already over a meter wide at birth, is independent from the start. But with such low reproductive rates, manta populations recover slowly from exploitation or environmental damage. Their greatest threat, unsurprisingly, is human activity. Mantas are targeted in some regions for their gill rakers, which are harvested for use in unregulated traditional medicine markets, particularly in East and Southeast Asia. The irony is profound. An animal that feeds by purifying the ocean is killed for the very tools that allow it to do so. Combined with entanglement in fishing gear, habitat degradation, and climate change impacts on plankton distribution, the risks to mantas are significant. Conservation efforts, including CITES protections and marine sanctuaries, have begun to slow their decline, but enforcement and awareness remain uneven. Even so, encountering a manta in the wild remains one of the most striking moments in marine observation. There is a quiet reverence to it, as if the ocean briefly reveals something ancient and deliberate. The manta does not posture or flee. It glides past, unbothered, unreadable, and immense. Its eyes seem to linger, deep and dark, hinting at awareness more than instinct. And then it moves on, disappearing into the blue with not even a ripple left behind. In a world where survival often means violence or speed, the manta ray thrives through grace. Its defense is space, its power is silence, and its presence reshapes the ocean without a sound. Here, in the midwater realm between reef and abyss, it flies not because it must escape, but because it was built to rule the space in between. The ocean doesn't roar here. Far below the chop of waves and the call of seabirds, beyond the reach of sunlight where color fades and pressure builds, the water holds a steadier rhythm, dense, muffled, almost still. And in that stillness lies the most chaotic battlefield nature ever assembled. Not the kind built on tooth and claw alone, but on deception, pressure, chemistry, and form. Here in the wild depths, survival doesn't always favor the strongest or the fastest. It favors the strangest. Across this submerged world, evolution has taken detours that defy common logic. A predator doesn't need to be big to dominate, nor fast to kill. It only needs to solve the problem its environment gives it. For some, like the moray eel coiled in a rocky crevice, the solution was a second set of jaws hidden in the throat, a pharyngeal mechanism capable of pulling prey inward like a mechanical trapdoor. For others, like the sea cucumber, the answer was to make its own body expendable, ejecting internal organs laced with toxins to distract or entangle attackers. And for yet another, the box-shaped pufferfish, Survival meant becoming a balloon bristling with neurotoxins, bluff backed by biochemistry. Each creature plays out its own strategy, evolved over millions of years of pressure, both literal and metaphorical. Some, like the cuttlefish or mimic octopus, rely on skins that can lie, deceive, and confuse, using chromatophores, muscular control, and light-bending pigment to manipulate not only predators' eyes, but their very expectations. These animals shift shape and color not just to blend in, but to perform, to appear larger, venomous, or even as a different species altogether. It's mimicry, not just as disguise, but as a psychological game. What looks like a flounder might be a mollusk. What looks like coral might be alive and watching. Meanwhile, others have turned their passive roles into active weapons. The oyster, seemingly defenseless, locks itself inside calcified armor and forms reefs that re-engineer the entire coastline. It fights not with motion, but with filtration, removing harmful particles from water and creating strongholds that shelter thousands of other species. In doing so, it controls space and oxygen, not through violence, but through sheer persistence. The starfish, with no eyes, no brain, and no speed, pries open prey with hydraulic tube feet and digests them outside its own body. It overcomes strength with patience and eats without entering. Even locomotion becomes a field of innovation. The seahorse, encased in armor and incapable of rapid movement, sidesteps the chase altogether. It clings vertically to the seagrass, blending into the scenery with slow adjustments and delicate camouflage. Males carry pregnancies in a pouch designed for gestational control, allowing the species to divide labor in a way virtually unknown among vertebrates. In contrast, the manta ray, colossal and winged, glides in open ocean not with predatory intent, but with eerie silence, filter feeding while flying through water with the fluid grace of engineered aerodynamics. Its enormous cephalic fins fold and unfurl like flight controls, guiding plankton into a mouth that opens like a submerged wind tunnel. In these depths, venom and electricity become tools for precision. The cone snail, sluggish and beautiful, fires a harpoon tipped with paralyzing toxins. It doesn't chase, it aims, and its cocktail of neurotoxins can shut down a nervous system faster than most predators can blink. Electric rays generate voltage strong enough to stun prey or deter threats, compressing stored charge into sudden muscle-locking bursts. These animals trade muscle and teeth for physics and molecules. They turn internal chemistry into outward force. What ties these diverse strategies together is a simple biological truth. The ocean doesn't care how you kill or defend, only that you do it efficiently. Every bizarre solution reflects a question asked over and over through evolutionary time. How do you catch something faster than you? How do you survive without moving? How do you fight when your body was never built for it? There is no single blueprint, no one right shape. Instead, there are endless variations, each adapted to a different corner of the marine world. Spiders of the deep wheeled, jointed limbs and arm-length claws. Jellyfish drift with venom trailing like invisible nets. Crabs pull in food with delicate appendages, while wearing shells coated in algae for camouflage. Some predators, like the grouper, create suction powerful enough to draw prey from the reef without a bite. Others, like the barracuda, rely on short bursts of acceleration faster than the blink of a human eye. But even those are more traditional players in a field increasingly dominated by organisms that don't obey expected rules. The ocean is the ultimate evolutionary crucible because it allows for extremes. It supports creatures that never see light and others that surf surface tension. It hosts ecosystems powered by chemosynthesis at thermal vents and others dependent on millimeter-thin plankton layers that drift with the moon. In shallow coral lagoons, species compete for color and movement. In the deep sea, they compete for shadows and silence. Each niche demands its own tactics. There's no global best strategy, only local mastery. In this context, the mutants of the sea are not aberrations. They are prototypes that worked. The fact that they seem strange is not because they failed to follow evolutionary patterns, but because they followed them too precisely, for environments humans rarely enter or understand. These animals are optimized for places we haven't designed for, behaving in ways that seem alien only because we've spent most of our time studying terrestrial life. In truth, they are not exceptions. They are proof of concept, living evidence that life will fill every available form, twist every available tool, and inhabit every available corner of the planet. Even the concept of the food chain becomes more web than ladder. In the ocean, prey often becomes predator in the span of a life cycle. Tiny larvae drift with zooplankton only to grow into hunters. Filter feeders dominate one moment, then fall victim to bottom feeders the next. Evolution doesn't work on a single axis of improvement. It folds and reverses, recycles and retools. It produces the quiet ambush as easily as the flashy pursuit, and favors any organism that survives long enough to reproduce, no matter how strange it looks doing it. And so in these wild depths, whether in the mangrove fringes, the coral alleys, or the abyssal plains, life is not ruled by simplicity or strength. It is ruled by specialization. The more specific the adaptation, the sharper the edge. One animal fights with armor, another with enzymes. One changes its shape, another its sex. One waits with venom, another with suction, another with strategy borrowed from symbiotic alliances. Some hide in plain sight. Others announce their toxicity with colors that no predator wants to test twice. This battlefield doesn't have victors or losers in the traditional sense. It only has survivors, each shaped by a lineage of trade-offs, failures, and fine-tuned advantages. The creatures that endure are not the ones that look familiar, but the ones that solve the puzzle in their own way. And in the ocean, there is no single puzzle, only billions of them all happening at once. So when we peer into these depths, at the octopus that vanishes into coral, at the electric sting that hides beneath sand, at the armored fish that eats with suction, and the snail that stabs with venom, we are not witnessing mistakes or anomalies. We are seeing the frontier of what evolution can build. A realm where strangeness is strategy, where every freakish limb and offbeat function is a success story written in salt water and survival. These are not misfits, they are marine masterpieces.